If you're familiar with creepypasta, scary stories, or horror media in general, you're probably familiar with Jeff the Killer. It's a horror story meant to provide a backstory to this terrifying picture. As you can see, he has these craters for eyes, this milky white skin, and a Joker esque smile. It's pretty terrifying, even if not entirely original. The original story was posted to the Creepypasta Wiki in 2011. Since then, the story has gained millions of readers, and Jeff has gained millions of fans. The Mr. Creepypasta narration of the story has 8 million views, but that number really does hardly any justice to the vast amount of people who have been exposed to Jeff the Killer media. I mean, just look at all these YouTube videos. There's a Jeff the Killer Slenderman rap battle with almost 200 million views. It's really incredible the amount of impact this character has had. Um, but as infatuating as the character Jeff is, the original story is pretty much just a meme that inspired a character that became bigger than the original author could have possibly ever intended. The story's terribly written, but there's also something so nostalgic about it to so many writers. Maybe it's the amateur quality of the writing. It just comes across as so endearing. I can't help but have some sort of love for the story. So as a writer myself, I thought it would be fun to read the story kind of under a microscope with a critical lens. We can talk about what parts of the story work, which parts don't. Maybe it'll help all of us become better writers and understand the story just a little bit better. Now, I read the story once to give myself an idea of exactly what things I want to talk about, but I'm not going to use a script. I believe that the most natural way to do this is to give a relatively um, natural reaction to the story. So I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to give you my honest thoughts, my live reaction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the story again, but with my live reaction and thoughts. Let's jump into it. Here is my critical review of Jeff the Killer. Excerpt from a local newspaper. Ominous unknown killer is still at large. The first thing that jumps out at me, ominous does not seem like the right word here. Of course, it works from a definition perspective, but connotationally, you hear the word ominous, you usually would think it gives the impression that it might do something bad. So I would look up at the sky and call a storm cloud ominous if it was gray and there was thunder. But if it was already raining and storming, I would not call the cloud ominous because it's already proven itself to be a threat, right? So I don't like that word there. After weeks of unexplained murders, the ominous unknown killer is still on the rise. After little evidence has been found, a young boy states that he survived one of the killer's attacks and bravely tells his story. To me, unsolved seems better than unexplained here. Um, I feel like unexplained would imply that we don't know the cause of the deaths, but unsolved is more so we know the cause, we don't know who did it. So I would go with unsolved right there. I also think it seems pretty redundant to call the killer unknown when we've already called the murders unexplained, especially when just words after we're saying that the killer's still on the rise. It just seems very redundant. Like we're told essentially three times that the killer is that they don't know who the killer is, right? That they haven't found the killer. So that doesn't exactly work for me. All right, so now we get the story from the little kid in question. I find it odd that we don't have an age, so I'm trying to picture in my head: is he 12? Is he 13? Is he 9? 10 seems like a good middle ground if the only information we get is that he's a little boy. So I'm going to say that he's around 10, right? But definitely we should get an age somewhere. I had a bad dream and I woke up in the middle of the night, says the boy. Um, First off, grammatically, this should be a period, not a comma. So when you're writing interrupting dialogue, the punctuation in between phrases of dialogue should coordinate with the phrase of dialogue prior to the tag. So if it was a complete sentence, this would be a period, and if it was not a complete sentence, it would be a comma, right? I'm going to try to stay away from pointing out grammar because otherwise, you guys aren't here for a grammarian video. Nor do I think it would be fun to go through and point out every single miscomma or misplaced semicolons, which there are plenty. But I see that's a mistake that a lot of new writers make, so I wanted to point that out. Open, even though I remember it being closed before I went to bed. I got up and shut it once more. That doesn't really seem like something a kid would say. Um, I just like close your eyes and imagine a kid saying, "I close the door once more." It doesn't work, right? And this is in quotes. This isn't someone else telling his story. This is exactly his words. Afterwards, again, it doesn't seem like something a kid would say. I simply crawled under my covers and tried to get back to sleep. That's when I had a strange feeling, like someone was watching me. I looked up and nearly jumped out of bed. There, in the little ray of light illuminating from between my curtains, were a pair of two eyes. Okay, two things. Um, I won't be too hard on the strange feeling thing. I've listened to the Creepcast narration. I know all the jokes about the strange feeling that keeps coming back. I think it's common for authors to say things like this, but a better writer would follow up with some explanation of what this feeling felt like. Of course, he does say strange feeling, someone was watching me, but what does someone watching you feel like? Is it a prickle on the back of your neck? Is it the urge to turn around? How does that manifest itself? That's a question that, as a writer, you need to ask yourself that. Write that part of the story when you've answered that question. And then, of course, a pair of two eyes implies that there are four eyes, which I don't believe to be the case. They weren't regular eyes, they were dark, ominous eyes. They were bordered in black and just plain out terrified me. That's when I saw his mouth, a long, horrendous smile that made every hair on my body stand up. Okay, first of all, I don't think saying they weren't regular eyes and then immediately describing the eyes is the right move here. If you describe them properly, you don't need to tell us that they're irregular or that they're ominous. We can pick up on that. We don't need to be told they're ominous or that they are not regular. That doesn't do anything. But describing them in detail and describing them well will get that message across. And I do understand the kid here is trying to describe the Jeff the Killer image, or the author is trying to describe the Jeff the Killer image through the lens of the kid, but it's honestly a pretty terrible description. I would describe the eyes as more like craters with a black dot in the middle, floating in a pool of white. But also, we can't really expect that kind of description from a little kid. He's not Edgar Allan Poe, so maybe I'm being a little bit nitpicky. But I still think, you don't want your dialogue, especially in a scene like this, to be childish, but you want it to be childlike. So would a child say this, but then, clean it up a little bit? So we don't need an Edgar Allan Poe description, but we could use something that's a little bit cleaner and that tells us a little more, but something that a child would actually say, right? The figure stood there, watching me. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he said it. A simple phrase, but said in a way only a madman could speak. I really don't know what that means. What is a way only a madman can speak? It's a nothing sandwich, right? So tell us, what did he do? Like, how did he say it? Was he growling it? Was he like twitching as he said it? Come on, like, I need to know what that looks like, right? He said, "Go to sleep." I let out a scream. That's what sent him at me. He pulled up a knife, aiming at my heart. He jumped on top of my bed. I fought him back. I kicked, I punched, I rolled around trying to knock him off me. That's when my dad busted in. The man threw the knife. It went into my dad's shoulder. The man probably would have finished him off if one of the neighbors hadn't alerted the police. Okay. I have a lot to say about this paragraph. So, first of all, saying I let out a scream really serves to distance the reader from the story. It's always better to just cut right to the verb. I screamed, I ran, whatever, right? Don't say I decided to run or whatever. Just jump to the verb. There's a misplaced semicolon after knife, right? Aiming at my heart is not an independent clause, so it cannot stand alone as a sentence. And I also think this is a very weird way to say that the police stopped him. The man would have finished him off if one of the neighbors hadn't alerted the police. The implication then is that the act of alerting the police is actually what stopped the killer, not the police themselves showing up. Also, it's a little confusing. Like, how long did the fight last for the police to be able to show up and save him? Like, when did the neighbor hear the police? How fast did he call them? And then how fast did he get there in order to actually like save the kid and his dad in time? It seems impossible, but hey, what do I know? They drove into the parking lot and ran towards the door. The man turned and ran down the hallway. I heard a smash, like glass breaking. As I came out of my room, I saw the window that was pointing towards the back of my house was broken. I looked out it to see him vanish into the distance. I can tell you one thing. I will never forget that face. Those cold, evil eyes and that psychotic smile. They will never leave my head. So I'm assuming he means a driveway, not a parking lot, because this is a house. Also, how does I'm trying to wrap my head around how does the kid know that they drove in and ran towards the door? To me, that implies that he's able to see them running toward the front door, but he's in his room. So, I mean, if the house is put together in such a way that that's possible, it needs to be described because um, it just doesn't make sense currently. As I came out of my room, I saw the window that was pointing towards the back of my house was broken. That was awkward and kind of tough phrasing to parse. In intense moments like this, I always recommend using simple, choppy sentences to convey to the reader the quickness and urgency of actions. Like, if this was written as something like, I ran out of my room and looked towards a sound. The window next to the back door was broken. I looked outside and saw the man vanish into the distance. It would move a lot more smoothly, and we would have a clearer image of what's going on and the intensity of the moment. Police are still on the look for this man. If you see anyone that fits the description in this story, please contact your local police department. I find that to be such a funny line because what description are we talking about? I think the only actual physical description we got of the killer is that he has dark eyes and a psychotic smile, which is not going to give us much to work with if we're going to be on the lookout for this guy. So I don't mind a cold opening like we got here if it's written well. I mean, a lot of stories do this to great effect, but this is Jeff the killer. If you want us to be scared of him, we can't open with him failing to kill a little kid and then throwing a knife and hitting someone in the least dangerous place ever, the shoulder, right? And I understand as a framing device, the author needed the kid to survive and tell the story, but you would think he at least got, brutally injured in this event, or his dad died, or something that makes a little more sense. Like maybe he was a witness rather than a victim. It it needs to be it it needs to be reworked. Jeff and his family had just moved into a new neighborhood. His dad had gotten a promotion at work, and they thought it would be best to live in one of those fancy neighborhoods. Jeff and his brother Lou couldn't complain, though. A new, better house. What was not to love? As they were getting unpacked, one of their neighbors came by. Okay, so calling it a fancy neighborhood is just such a weird thing to me. Like, it's something that only like little kid could come up with. But also, like, if you're gonna call it a fancy neighborhood, you have to at least tell us what that means. Is it a gated community where everyone has massive properties and half-mile long driveways? Or is this like a basic suburban neighborhood? Everyone has different definitions of what fancy means, so you have to explain that to us so that we can feel like we are in the story and we can understand what's going on. And then saying a new, better house, that's cool and all, great for Jeff and his family, but what is a new, better house? Where are they coming from? If they're coming from a mansion and they're going to an even better house, that gives us something, but we don't know where they're coming from, and we don't know what fancy is for them. That needs to be answered if we want to be fully immersed in the story. Hello, she said. I'm Barbara. I live across the street from you. Well, I just wanted to introduce myself and to introduce my son. She turns around and calls her son over. Billy, these are our new neighbors. Billy said hi and ran back to play in the yard. This is really funny. Like, there's nothing like, I can't even necessarily say what's wrong with this. This is just really awkward, funny writing. There is a shift to present tense here, which, new writers, remember, always stay in the same tense throughout your story. Make sure your tenses agree with each other. Common mistake, but you'll see throughout the rest of the story, it shifts back and forth from past to present, but probably about a dozen times. Well, said Jeff's mom, I'm Margaret, and this is my husband Peter, and my two sons, Jeff and Lou. They each introduced themselves, and then Barbara invited them to her son's birthday. Jeff and his brother were about to object when their mother said they would love to. When Jeff and his family are done packing, Jeff went up to his room. Pretty basic paragraph. It sets up them going to the party, but again, more tense switching. Come on. Mom, why would you invite us to some kid's party? If you haven't noticed, I'm not some dumb kid. What does that even mean? I really don't know what that means. Jeff, said his mother, we just moved here. We should show that we want to spend time with our neighbors. Now, we're going to that party, and that's final. Jeff started to talk, but stopped himself, knowing that he couldn't do anything. Whenever his mom said something, it was final. He walked up to his room and plopped down on his bed. He sat there looking at his ceiling when suddenly he got a weird feeling. Not so much a pain, but a weird feeling. He dismissed it as just some random feeling. He heard his mother call him down to get his stuff, and he walked down to get it. So we get the word feeling 3 times in this paragraph, but we still never get a description of what the feeling feels like. I understand the author is trying to hint at the violence that's inside of Jeff. Um, I think that's a terrible plot device, but if we're going to use it, there needs to be some logic surrounding it, some explanation. It doesn't have to make sense to us, but it has to make sense based on the logic we're presented in the story. Why does he start feeling this feeling? What changes? And please, a description of the freaking feeling, dude. If the feeling didn't start until something bad happened to Jeff, it would somewhat make sense. But regardless, if we're going to do this feeling thing, we need to know what it feels like. Is he suddenly angry? Does he, if for even a moment, feel like he wants to like rip off the ceiling fan? Does he get the sense that he's not fully in control of himself? Like his fingers are twitching on their own? This is all kind of stupid stuff I'm just saying off the top of my head. But he can think of something better. The author can think of something better. There has to be something. The next day, Jeff walked downstairs to get breakfast and get ready for school. As he sat there eating breakfast, he once again got that feeling. This time it was stronger. It gave him a slight tugging pain, but he once again dismissed it. As he and Lou finished breakfast, they walked down to the bus stop. They sat there waiting for the bus. And then, all of a sudden, some kid on a skateboard jumped over them, only inches above their laps. They both jumped back in surprise. Hey, what the hell? Okay, what does stronger mean? He says the feeling got stronger. There's a slight tugging pain. Stronger from what? We don't know what stronger is. Now we finally are. We're told slight tugging pain, but I don't really even know what that means. Does it feel like his organs are being pulled out of his body? Does it feel like his skin is being pulled away? We don't know. And then he says that they ate breakfast as they walked to the bus stop. Are they eating and walking? If so, that needs to be more clearly described. And this is a little bit nitpicky, but it is something that you need to think about when you get into higher level writing. I want to know what they're sitting on. They're sitting waiting for the bus. I'm assuming it's probably the curb, but I want to feel grounded in the world of the story. We need to be told that they're on a curb so that when these kids jump over them and skateboards, we know what that looked like. Right. And it would do a lot just to set the scene of the story and what kind of neighborhood they're in. This is an opportunity to do that. And the author didn't take it, which sucks. The kid landed and turned back to them. He kicked the skateboard up and caught it with his hands. The kid seemed to be about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff. He wears an Aeropostale shirt and ripped blue jeans. So I don't like that he said caught it with his hands, because what else would you catch it with? That being said, I do like that we finally got an age. We say the kid seems about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff, meaning that Jeff is 13. And Lou appears to be a year or two younger than Jeff. So I'm going to say he's probably like 10, 11. So that I do like that. And then, of course, we got another tense shift. He wears an Aeropostale shirt and red blue jeans. It should be he wore an Aeropostale shirt and red blue jeans. And of course, that article should be an Aeropostale shirt, not a Aeropostale shirt. It's always an if it comes before a vowel sound, and a if it comes before a consonant sound. Well, well, well. Looks like we got some new meat. Dude. I can't imagine someone unironically saying this in real life. It really feels like dialogue from a bad Disney movie, but at least in a Disney movie, the person saying this would be like 16 instead of 12, so it would kind of make sense in like a weird way. I digress. Suddenly, 2 other kids appeared. One was super skinny and the other was huge. And what do we mean with huge? Is he jacked, fat, tall? I don't know. Huge is not doing it for me from a descriptor standpoint. Well, since you're new here, I'd like to introduce ourselves. Over there is Keith. Jeff and Lou looked over to the skinny kid. He had a dopey face that you would expect a sidekick to have. And he's Troy. They looked over at the fat kid. Talk about a tub of lard. This kid looked like he hadn't exercised since he was crawling. Okay. Okay. The dopey face sidekick thing. That's definitely some authorial voice slipping through into the story. This kid is going to be the main antagonist sidekick throughout the rest of the story, and the author smartly wants him to look like a sidekick. But instead of giving him some sort of characterization or demeanor to make him appear as a sidekick like person, whatever that means. He just says, like, hey, he looks like a sidekick, and expects that to work for us, which it doesn't. And then talk about a Tubbalar. The kid looked like he hadn't exercised since he was crawling is insane. I am going to have to add that to my insult vocabulary. But unfortunately, this is not even in dialogue, and it's not a thought from Jeff either. It's literally the third person narrator roasting this kid for no reason. It's hilarious, but it's really stupid. And I, said the first kid, am Randy. Now, for all the kids in this neighborhood, there was a small price for bus fare, if you catch my drift. There's just no world where a 12-year-old says that. Lou stood up, ready to punch the lights out of the kid's eyes, when one of his friends pulled a knife on him. Tisk, tisk, tisk. I had hoped you'd be more cooperative, but it seems we must do this the hard way. The kid walked up to Lou and took his wallet out of his pocket. Jeff got that feeling again. Now it was truly strong, a burning sensation. He stood up, but Lou gestured him to sit down. Jeff ignored him and walked up to the kid. I don't even know what this world is. It's so unbelievable. I don't even know what to say at this point. It's veering into, no, it's not veering. It's crashed into like satirical land, but I don't know. I don't think that was the author's intention, right? there's enough intentionality here. I'm also surprised that someone who's Lou's age, which again I'm assuming to be like 10 or 11, I'm surprised that he has a wallet on him, and I'd be even more surprised that there's actually money in it. But again, they're apparently in a fancy neighborhood, so maybe. It's just really, really funny. And again, what is the feeling? It was a burning sensation. It was a tugging. I don't know what it is, and I want to know. I really want to know. Listen here, you little punk. Give back my bro's wallet or else. Randy put the wallet in his pocket and pulled out his own knife. Obviously, Jeff is the one saying this dialogue, but because Randy's action is immediately after it, it almost looks like Randy is the one saying this, so that action from Randy should be in a new paragraph. Oh, and what will you do? Just as he finished the sentence, Jeff popped the kid in the nose. As Randy reached for his face, Jeff grabbed the kid's wrist and broke it. Randy screamed, and Jeff grabbed the knife from his hand. Troy and Keith rushed Jeff, but Jeff was too quick. He threw Randy to the ground. Keith lashed out at him, but Jeff ducked and stabbed him in the arm. Keith dropped his knife and fell to the ground screaming. Troy rushed him too, but Jeff didn't even need the knife. He just punched Troy straight in the stomach, and Troy went down. As he fell, he puked all over. Lou could do nothing but look in amazement at Jeff. Okay, I don't hate that, but it keeps switching between Randy and the kid, and we know it's Randy. It doesn't need to be done. It's just adding a little bit of confusion, like who is the kid. But also, like, these are Jason Bourne level maneuvers from Jeff. Like, you're expecting me to believe that he just took out all of these kids and then had the instincts to stab someone. It's like, how many times has he done this before? Is he like a trained assassin? I feel like the military should be recruiting this guy. And then the fact that Troy puked from being punched in the stomach, he's the fat kid. So to me, the implication is literally that he's so fat that he just has so much food sitting in his stomach that when he got punched, it just freaking spewed anywhere because it had nowhere else to go. It's kind of hilarious. It's really freaking stupid, but pretty hilarious. Jeff, how'd you... That was all he said. They saw the bus coming and knew they'd be blamed for the whole thing. So they started running as fast as they could. As they ran, they looked back and saw the bus driver rushing over to Randy and the others. As Jeff and Lou made it to school, they didn't dare tell what happened. Okay, but how the hell did they get to school? They were just, they just missed the bus because they... Okay. All they did was sit and listen. Lou just thought of that as his brother beating up a few kids. But Jeff knew it was more. It was something scary. As he got that feeling, he felt how powerful it was, the urge to just hurt someone. He didn't like how it sounded, but he couldn't help feeling happy. He felt that strange feeling go away and stay away for the entire day of school. Even as he walked home due to the whole thing near the bus stop, and how now he probably wouldn't be taking the bus anymore, he felt happy. When he got home, his parents asked him how his day was, and he said in a somewhat ominous voice, "It was a wonderful day." Next morning, he heard a knock at his front door. He walked down to find 2 police officers at the door, his mother looking back at him with an angry look. Okay, there is way too much in this paragraph. I wanted to stop like 5 different times. There's definitely should have been like 2 or 3 paragraphs because so many different things happened. It's just absolutely not all one idea as a paragraph should contain. Um, so, okay, first of all, like, okay, that sentence, Lou just thought of that as his brother beating up a few kids. We don't know what he's talking about syntactically. Of course, we can use our context clues and see, okay, he's referring to the event, but it can't be vague like that. It's literally grammatically we don't know what he's saying. It should be something like Lou thought of the morning events as his brother beating up a few kids. Right? That's simple. It's very understandable. You don't have to pause and think about it at all. Um, and the feeling, was the feeling always an urge to hurt someone, or has it transformed into an urge to hurt someone? The feeling thing is still confusing. It hasn't been fully fleshed out. I would tell the author, you need to figure out what the feeling is before you write the story. Or, now the story's been written, think about what the feeling is. You've got your ideas on the page, figure out what the feeling is, and then revise and make it consistent, right? This is not unsalvageable. Well, and then of course, can we stop referring to the feeling as a feeling? It's an urge now. Can we just call it an urge? Can we drop the word feeling? but and then using the word ominous is insane. We need to be specific. What does ominous sound like? If it was truly ominous, how would his parents respond to him saying, "It was a wonderful day," in an ominous voice? Again, if it was actually ominous, we wouldn't need to be told that it was ominous, and we would be able to see that, one, from how it's described, but two, from how his parents react to it. If they are uneasy from the way he said it was a wonderful day, if they start guarding themselves, then we know it was ominous. "Son," said one of the cops, "we found 3 kids, 2 stabbed, one having a bruise on his stomach, and we have witnesses proving that you fled the scene. Now, what the hell does that tell us?" Jeff knew it was no use. He could say him and Lou had been attacked, but then there was no proof it was not them who attacked first. They couldn't say that they weren't fleeing because, truth be told, they were. So Jeff couldn't defend himself or Lou. I hate using the word "we found 3 kids." I would rather be like, we had a report, or we talked to 3 kids. Found, and I am being a little nitpicky, but found to me would imply that they were like incapacitated or dead or something. So I don't like that. And then the part about Jeff not being able to defend himself or Lou, it's definitely flawed logic, since it should be possible to prove the bullies terrorized the kids in the neighborhood. However, it kind of makes sense because, a 12-year-old might not be able to fully flesh out the facts. But then again, Jeff, to me, is written to be a little more, I don't know if mature is the right word, but he reads as though he's older than 12. And so to me, that makes it hard to believe that he wouldn't have the wherewithal to tell the cops, this is what's happening. The kids are robbing them. The police could investigate that, and surely Lou and Jeff could, plead self-defense. They might not get away scotch-free, but it would be better than nothing, right? "Son, call down your brother." Jeff couldn't do it, since it was him who beat up all the kids. No shit. "Sir, it was me. I was the one who beat up the kids. Lou tried to hold me back, but he couldn't stop me." The cop looked at his partner and they both nod. Again, tint switch. "Well, kid, looks like a year in juvie." Okay, so in this world, the cops play judge, jury, and executioner. So I imagine they could show up at like a murder scene or something, and they would just shoot the perpetrator in the head on sight. Well, you killed him. That's, well, yeah, death penalty. Boom. Right. And imagine, this is crazy, but imagine there's like a suicide and the police show up and some family members there. They're like, "Oh my God, it's all my fault." They just fucking kill him. He's blaming himself. He's like, "Oh, it's my fault. I didn't check on him." That's what he was going to say. But they didn't let him finish. He was like, he blames himself. He's like, "I did it. I killed him." Dead. "Wait," says Lou. They all looked up to see him holding a knife. The officers pulled their guns and locked them on Lou. Wait, he's like several feet away, right? Am I reading this right? They're pulling guns on him. This isn't really that unrealistic with the current state of law enforcement. I'm actually going to choose to read this as a critique of the times. I think the author was ahead of his time. I think he was looking into the future. So no complaints. It was me. I beat up those little punks. Have the marks to prove it. He lifted up his sleeves to reveal cuts and bruises as if he was in a struggle. Okay, so are we implying that Lou cut and bruised his own wrist to make it seem like he was in a struggle? Or am I misreading something? Son, just put the knife down, said the officer. Lou held up the knife and dropped it to the ground. He put his hands up and walked over to the cops. No, Lou, it was me. I did it. Jeff had tears running down his face. Okay, the story is pretty poorly written, but I love that there is a hint of strong depth of character here. Jeff is simultaneously a extremely violent person ever since the feeling started. Um, he's a psychotic killer. He becomes a psychotic killer, but he's also someone who loves his brother. If this were written a little better, this would make Jeff a very complicated character, and it would allow readers to have complex feelings about him. So I think the writer did have at least a few good instincts as he wrote this. So I appreciate this bit of dialogue. Poor bro, trying to take the blame for what I did. Well, take me away. The police led Lou out to the patrol car. This is just a hilarious thing for a 10-year-old to say. Like, literally, close your eyes and imagine like a 10-year-old that you know, or like a friend, or not a friend, a little brother. I hope you guys aren't 10 watching this, but a little brother or something. Take me away. Crazy. Lou, tell them it was me. Tell them I was the one who beat up those kids. Jeff's mother put her hands on his shoulders. Jeff, please, you don't have to lie. We know it's Lou. You can stop. Jeff watched helplessly as the cop car speeds off with Lou inside. A few minutes later, Jeff's dad pulled into the driveway, seeing Jeff's face and knowing something was wrong. Again, we have this terrible paragraph blocking where we should have got a new paragraph after the cop car speeds off with Lou inside. Secondly, we have another tense change. The cop car sped off. It should be past tense as the rest of the story is written. And then the biggest thing, so I find it crazy to believe, like the mom just instantly believes that her 10-year-old son was able to fight off 3 older boys, right? They're all like 11, 12, 13, bruise one of their stomachs, cause him to throw up from one punch, stab them. It's crazy. I mean, it would be pretty ridiculous for Jeff to have done it either, but the younger one is even more ridiculous. It seems like the logical outcome, at least in the world, there's no logical outcome at the point that we've gotten to, but the more logical outcome would be Lou and Jeff both getting arrested, because are we going to believe that just one of them just 1v3'd them and the other one just sat there and watched? I mean, that is what happened, right? But I don't know, dude. Son, what is it? Jeff couldn't answer. His vocal cords were strained from crying. Instead, Jeff's mother walked his father inside to break the bad news to him as Jeff wept in the driveway. After an hour or so, Jeff walked back into the house, seeing that his parents were both shocked, sad, and disappointed. He couldn't look at them. He couldn't see how they thought of Lou when it was his fault. He just went to sleep, trying to get the whole thing off his mind. 2 days went by with no word from Lou at JDC. No friends to hang out with. Nothing but sadness and guilt. That is until Saturday, when Jeff is woke up by his mother with a happy, sunshiny face. Okay, Jeff wept in the driveway. This is something that we call blocking or grounding in, I guess, literary circles. I don't know. We need to know where the characters are before action happens. We don't know how Jeff got to the driveway. So before he was inside with the cops, now he's weeping in the driveway. It's confusing. I mean, how did he get to the driveway? It really breaks my immersion when things like that aren't explained. And then we get some description. His parents were both shocked, sad, and disappointed. Jeff can't know that unless he saw them. I know this is a third person narrator, but we're largely in Jeff's head. We can't know that unless we see them being shocked, sad, and disappointed. So show us the facial expressions that they're making, right? And then that JDC acronym. I actually had to look it up the first time I read it. It does seem self-explanatory, but it did kind of bump me at first. It's Juvenile Detention Center. I think the first time you bring up JDC or any kind of acronym, you need to spell it out, and then you can use an acronym afterwards because you've defined the term. Jeff, it's the day, she said as she opened up the curtains and let light flood into his room. What? What's today? Asked Jeff as he stirs awake. Tense again. Why, it's Billy's party. He was now fully awake. Bro, how are they still going to the party with Lou being gone? It's been like 3 days and the mom is all happy and ready to go to a party. It's ridiculous. Mom, you're joking, right? You don't expect me to go to some kid's party after... There was a long pause. Jeff, we both know what happened. I think this party could be the thing that brightens up the past days. Now, get dressed. Jeff's mother walked out of the room and downstairs to get ready herself. He fought himself to get up. He picked out a random shirt and a pair of jeans and walked downstairs. He saw his mother and father all dressed up. His mother in a dress and his father in a suit. He thought, why would they ever wear such fancy clothes to a kid's party? I'm with Jeff. Why? Like, what are they wearing to this kid's party? I mean, this is a neighborhood where people are like in mansions and they have butlers and the party's filled with professional catering and live musicians and stuff like that. Maybe, but we still have no idea what this neighborhood looks like. So it's not making sense to me. It's not computing. Son, is that all you're going to wear? Said Jeff's mom. Better than wearing too much, he said. His mother pushed down the feeling to yell at him and hit it with a smile. This is a weird shift from the narrator. Previously, we were mostly only getting thoughts from Jeff's head, but now we seem to be all knowing. We're getting thoughts from his mom's head too. It's weird. It's like the narrator picks and chooses when he has more knowledge. It doesn't really work. We need to stay consistent. He's either omniscient or he's in one person's head or something in between as long as it's consistent. Now, Jeff, we may be overdressed, but this is how you go if you want to make an impression, said his father. Jeff grunted and went back up to his room. I don't have any fancy clothes, he yelled downstairs. Just pick out something, called his mother. He looked around in his closet for what he would call fancy. He found a pair of black dress pants he had for special occasions and an undershirt. He couldn't find a shirt to go with it, though. He looked around and found only striped and patterned shirts, none of which go with dress pants. Finally, he found a white hoodie and put it on. So his mom said, just pick out something. He already did, and you told him it wasn't fancy enough. Other than that, though, I actually think this is a pretty decent description for world building and adding those 4D elements. We're getting inside Jeff's head through his actions and the type of clothes he has. But since it's coming at such a random time, and the story's like over halfway over and we've been missing it until now, it feels out of place that we suddenly got kind of specific and start world building a little bit. I don't like that. You're wearing that? They both said. His mother looked at her watch. Oh, no time to change. Let's just go, she said as she herded Jeff and his father out the door. They crossed the street over to Barbara and Billy's house. They knocked on the door, and it appeared that Barbara, just like his parents, were way overdressed. As they walked inside, all Jeff could see were adults, no kids. Okay, I really hate his parents. The fact they both said, you're wearing that? You're wearing that? I don't think it was on purpose, so I can't give the author too much credit. But it actually is one of the positives of the story. It makes me root for Jeff just a little more. Like, I'm on his side. I just want his parents to chill. But like I said, I don't know if that was really intentional. Then he says Barbara's overdressed, but we don't really know what she's wearing. Come on, I want to know what she's wearing. The kids are out in the yard, Jeff. How about you go and meet some of them, said Barbara. Jeff walked outside to a yard full of kids. They were running around in weird cowboy costumes and shooting each other with plastic guns. He might as well be standing in a Toys R Us. Suddenly, a kid came up to him and handed him a toy gun and hat. So I don't know, why are all the kids wearing cowboy costumes? Like, who planned this party? Hey, wanna play? He said. This definitely feels like the author is doing like a weird kind of self-insert here. Like he thinks like maybe the author's 13. He thinks 13 is all grown up. So anyone younger is like, wanna play? And can't talk right? It's funny. No kid. I'm way too old for this stuff. The kid looked at him with that weird puppy dog face. Please, said the kid. Fine, said Jeff. The author was like mostly doing fine with dialogue until now, but we need to separate two different people talking by two different paragraphs. Also, I think it's funny how quickly Jeff gave in to the kid. He put on the hat and started to pretend shoot at the kids. At first, he thought it was totally ridiculous, but then he started to actually have fun. It might not have been super cool, but it was the first time he had done something that took his mind off of Lou. So he played with the kids for a while until he heard a noise, a weird rolling noise. Then it hit him. Randy, Troy, and Keith all jumped over the fence on their skateboards. Jeff dropped the fake gun and ripped off the hat. Randy looked at Jeff with a burning hatred. First of all, I would not describe the sound of approaching skateboards as a weird rolling noise. That I don't know. And then secondly, you're telling me these kids hurdled a fence on skateboards. I need to know how tall the fence was. And also that kid Troy, he was described as a tub of lard earlier. It's not computing, guys. I don't get it. Hello. Jeff, is it? We have some unfinished business. Jeff saw his bruised nose. I think we're even. I beat the crap out of you, and you got my brother sent to JDC. Randy got an angry look in his eyes. Oh no, I don't go for even. I go for winning. Go for winning is crazy. You may have kicked our asses that one day, but not today. I think it's really funny that they just admit to getting their asses beat. As he said that, Randy rushed at Jeff. They both fell to the ground. Randy punched Jeff in the nose, and Jeff grabbed him by the ears. By the ears is crazy, and headbutted him. Jeff pushed Randy off him, and both rose to their feet. Kids were screaming and parents were running out of the house. Troy and Keith pulled guns out of their pockets. No one interrupts or guts will fly, they said. Guts will fly? I think it's bullets will fly. I guess guts work, but that's crazy. No one interrupts or guts will fly, they said. So it wasn't just one that said it. Both people said guts will fly. Wow, okay. Randy pulled a knife on Jeff and stabbed it into his shoulder. Damn. So these 12-year-old kids pulled guns on the parents of this party so that they could have this fight with Jeff. I think this is so unbelievably insane. I want to believe it's satirical, but it's not. You know it's not. At the least, I do hope this is clear enough for Lou to be able to get out of juvie, right? I mean, I think the self-defense claim seems even more plausible now. So, justice for Lou. Jeff screamed and fell to his knees. Randy started kicking him in the face. After 3 kicks, Jeff grabs his foot and twists it. Tense, causing Randy to fall to the ground. Jeff stood up and walked toward the back door. Troy grabbed him. Need some help? He picks Jeff up by the back of the collar and throws him through the patio door. As Jeff tries to stand, he is kicked down to the ground. Randy repeatedly starts kicking Jeff until he starts to cough up blood. Through the patio door, dude. He threw him through the patio door. Like, do they have super strength? Is this The Incredibles? Come on, Jeff, fight me. He picks up Jeff and throws him into the kitchen. Randy sees a bottle of vodka on the counter and smashes the glass over Jeff's head. This is starting to seem like they actually, like, it's genuinely starting to seem like they have superpowers, because I don't think it's physically possible for a 13-year-old to be this strong. Fight! He throws Jeff back into the living room. Come on, Jeff, look at me. Jeff glances up, his face riddled with blood. I was the one who got your brother sent to JDC, and now you're going to just sit there and let him rot in here for a whole year? You should be ashamed. Jeff starts to get up. Okay. First of all, he's not going to rot in there. The cops only sentenced him to a year. He's going to be like 12 when he gets out. You hardly remember it in 20 years. All right. Second of all, this is reading like the author just got back from watching like a super like intense but poorly written like action movie. Or even almost like the motivation thing. It's such a cliche, but it does remind me of my best friend dared me to, or I dared my best friend to ruin my life. It's Jesus. Oh, finally, you stand and fight. Jeff is now to his feet, blood and vodka on his face. Once again, he gets that strange feeling, the one in which he hasn't felt for a while. Finally, he's up, says Randy as he runs at Jeff. That's when it happens. Something inside Jeff snaps. His psyche is destroyed. All rational thinking is gone. All he can do is kill. He grabs Randy and pile drives him to the ground. He gets on top of him and punches him straight in the heart. The punch causes Randy's heart to stop. As Randy gasps for breath, Jeff hammers down on him, punch after punch. Blood gushes from Randy's body until he takes one final breath and dies. This is getting to the point where I really don't know if this is worth critiquing anymore. It's like doing an art critique on like analyzing the crayon drawings of a kindergartner. And don't get me started on pile driver. Do you guys know what a pile driver is?
Jeff.
It kind of makes me question everything I've read so far in this story. Everyone is looking at Jeff now. What were they looking at before? The parents, the crying kids, even Troy and Keith. Even Troy and Keith. What were they looking at? Though they easily break from their gaze and point their guns at Jeff. They break their gaze from Jeff to point their guns at Jeff. Okay, makes sense, guys. Jeff sees the guns trained on him and runs for the stairs. As he runs, Troy and Keith let out fire on him, each shot missing. Losers. Jeff runs up the stairs. He hears Troy and Keith follow up behind. As they let out their final rounds of bullets, Jeff ducks into the bathroom. He grabs the towel rack and rips it off the wall. Troy and Keith race in, knives ready. Hey, if there's one thing you could say about Jeff, he is smart. He found a weapon. He's very he can make things work. He's yeah, okay. This is like John Wick mixed with like Sky High or The Incredibles or something. I don't think you can call this a literary analysis anymore. I think I'm literally just losing my mind at this story. I'm losing brain cells. Troy swings his knife at Jeff, who backs away and bangs the towel rack into Troy's face. Troy goes down hard, and now all that's left is Keith. He is more agile than Troy, though, and ducks when Jeff swings the towel rack. He dropped the knife. Tins, 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 tins. He pushed him into the wall. A thing of bleach fell down on top of him from the top shelf. It burnt both of them, and they both started to scream. Jeff wiped his eyes as best as he could. He pulled back the towel rack and swung it straight into Keith's head. As he lay there, bleeding to death, he let out an ominous smile. Okay. If you're wondering, this is the 5th time the word ominous has been used in the story, which honestly is less than I thought, but it's literally insane. I don't know if we can even call it insane anymore, because maybe this is just what a fancy neighborhood is like in this world. But imagine a 12-year-old's dying and he lets out a smile. What's so funny? Asked Jeff. Keith pulled out a lighter and switched it on. What's funny, he said, is that you're covered in bleach and alcohol. Jeff's eyes widened as Keith threw the lighter at him. As soon as the flame made contact with him, the flames ignited the alcohol in the vodka. While the alcohol burned him, the bleach bleached his skin. Jeff let out a terrible screech as he caught on fire. He tried to roll out the fire, but it was no use. The alcohol made him a walking inferno. He ran down the hall and fell down the stairs. Everybody started screaming as they saw Jeff, now a man on fire, drop to the ground, nearly dead. The last thing Jeff saw was his mother and the other parents trying to extinguish the flame. That's when he passed out. I'm going to just say that this scene made a lot of sense. Yeah. When Jeff woke, he had a cast wrapped around his face. So we don't know how much time has passed. We need to know how much time has passed, because we need some context here. Is it a few hours? Is it a few days? Is it a week? Has he been in a coma? We don't know. He couldn't see anything, but he felt a cast on his shoulder and stitches all over his body. He tried to stand up, but he realized that there was some tube in his arm. And when he tried to get up, it fell out and a nurse rushed in. I don't think it makes sense that he would even have the sense to try and stand up. But what do I know? Okay. I don't think you can get out of bed just yet, she said as she put him back in his bed and reinserted the tube. Jeff sat there with no vision, no idea of what his surroundings were. Finally, after hours, he heard his mother. Okay, so she's saying we're saying that she put him back in bed, but he only said that he tried to get out of bed. I don't think he actually was able to successfully get out of the bed. And then he said that he sat there. Is he not lying down? You would think he'd be lying down. And then it took him hours to hear his mom. Where has she been? Where has she been? Did they finish the party? I like to imagine that they all went to the party, cleaned up the dead kids, and said, well, I mean, we all wore our nice suits. Let's go ahead and have a good time. Honey, are you okay? She asked. Jeff couldn't answer, though. His face was covered, and he was unable to speak. Oh, honey, I have great news. After all the witnesses told the police that Randy confessed to trying to attack you, they decided to let Lou go. Hey, I called that. At least I predicted one thing from this story. This made Jeff almost bolt up, stopping halfway, remembering the tube coming out of his arm. He'll be out by tomorrow, and then the two of you will be together again. Jeff's mother hugs Jeff and says her goodbye. What, she's leaving? She stopped in, said hi, now she's leaving? And the tense is insane, right? We get another tense shift. Nice. The next couple of weeks were those where Jeff was visited by his family. Then came the day where his bandages were to be removed. His family was all there to see it, what he would look like. As the doctors unwrapped the bandages from Jeff's face, everyone was on the edge of their seats. They waited until the last bandage holding the cover over his face was almost removed. Let's hope for the best, said the doctor. If my doctor ever says, let's hope for the best, as he's removing bandaging from my head, I would literally tell him to just kill me. I don't want to see it. Just kill me. Just shoot me in the head now. I'll confess to murder so the cops can shoot me in the head. He quickly pulls the cloth, letting the rest fall from Jeff's face. Jeff's mother screams, yeah, just literally just kill me. Just kill me. Jeff's mother screams at the side of his face. Lou and Jeff's dad are awestruck at his face. So first of all, when did Lou get there? That's just terrible blocking. Like, we don't know when he got there. It's okay. Where is he standing? I don't know. I don't know if awestruck is the right word to use here. I feel like that usually implies some sort of respect or reverence even. I don't know if that's what they're feeling right now. What happened to my face? Jeff said. He rushed out of bed and ran to the bathroom. Okay, so he can just get up and run, so he's fine now. He looked in the mirror and saw the cause of the distress. His face, it's horrible. So that the narrator is the one saying that. That's not Jeff saying that. His lips were burnt to a deep shade of red. His face was turned into a pure white color, and his hair singed from brown to black. He slowly put his hand to his face. It had a sort of leathery feel to it now. He looked back at his family and then back at the mirror. And if you don't think about it too hard, and maybe have like a few drinks before reading or something, which I wish I did before I read this, this almost kind of makes sense. It's kind of cool. Like, imagine this actually happening to someone and they come out looking like Jeff the Killer. It's terrifying, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, but in a way it is kind of interesting in like a very, very screwed up way. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, like in the way that you can't look away from a crime scene, maybe. Or maybe I'm just a messed up person. I don't know. Jeff, said Lou. It's not that bad. Not that bad, said Jeff. It's perfect. His family were equally surprised. Jeff started laughing uncontrollably. His parents noticed that his left eye and hand were twitching. So he's completely lost it now. As much as I hate to say it, this would be a little more believable if we had a callback to the feeling, some more description of it fully consuming him, but we would still need to really understand what it is. I at this point am going to assume that it's a burning rage and a changing of his identity or something along those lines. And now the narrator can tell what his parents are thinking, which is problematic, but I will let it slide because we're almost done. Jeff, are you okay? Okay. I've never felt more happy. Ha 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 ha. Look at me. This face goes perfectly with me. He couldn't stop laughing. He stroked his face, feeling it, looking at it in the mirror. What caused this? Well, you may recall that when Jeff was fighting Randy, something in his mind, his sanity, snapped. Now he was left as a crazy killing machine. That is, his parents didn't know. Okay, so suddenly near the end of the story, the narrator has decided to talk to us directly. Not only is this super jarring and weird, it's telling us things that we already know, which is just redundant. So, not a good move. Doctor, said Jeff's mom, is my son all right? You know, in the head? Oh, yes. This behavior is typical for patients that have taken large amounts of painkillers. If the behavior doesn't change in a few weeks, bring him back here and we'll give him a psychological test. Okay, this is normal. Implication is that it's going to be a few weeks. Like the painkillers are going to make him like this for a few weeks. Maybe that's what Jeff the Killer is. It's just a guy who took too many painkillers and became a psychotic killer. It doesn't really even feel right to critique this anymore. Oh, thank you, doctor. Jeff's mother went over to Jeff. Jeff, sweetie, it's time to go. Jeff looks away from the mirror. Tense, tense, tense. His face still formed into a crazy smile. Okay, mommy. Ha ha ha. His mother took him by the shoulder and took him to get his clothes. I feel like this is turning into a Joker fan fiction, but it's obviously written by someone who doesn't know how to pull that character off, so they're just writing him, laughing a lot, and saying weird things like, okay, mommy. This is what came in, said the lady at the desk. Jeff's mom looked down to see the black dress pants and white hoodie her son wore. Now they were clean of blood and stitched together. Jeff's mother led him to his room and made him put his clothes on. Then they left. not knowing this was their final day of life. Okay, a couple things. First of all, you want me to believe that his clothes survived the fire? He was described as a walking inferno. That there's no way. And then the hospital did his laundry and stitched the clothes back together. I don't think hospitals do that. I'll let it slide. Um, Secondly, though, this might be unpopular. I don't know. I really like the foreshadowing here. They left, not knowing that this is the final day of their life. I like the not so subtle foreshadowing. The author has admitted to us that they're going to die, but we don't know how it's going to happen. It's something that Stephen King does a lot. He'll say something like, well, he didn't know was that this was his last time that he was ever going to eat waffles. Um, and suddenly the tension is not about whether or not they're going to live, but it becomes about how they're going to die. We know they're going to die, but how is it going to happen? And we keep reading not because we want to see if they survive, but because we need to know how they die. That being said, their final day of life is misleading. I'm not sure who all is included in they, but we know Jeff doesn't die because he goes on to kill more people after this story. And I think syntactically, the they would imply that Jeff is included, which is not the case. So later that night, Jeff's mother woke to a sound coming from the bathroom. It sounded as if someone was crying. She slowly walked over to see what it was. When she looked in the bathroom, she saw a horrendous sight. Jeff had taken a knife and carved a smile into his cheeks. Okay, so he's literally just the Joker now. Nice. Jeff, what are you doing? Asked his mother. Jeff looked over to his mother. I couldn't keep smiling, Mommy. It hurt after a while. Now I can smile forever. Jeff's mother noticed his eyes, ringed in black. Jeff, your eyes. His eyes were seemingly never closing. Okay, so carving a smile into your face apparently hurts less than holding a smile. Cool. Got it. I couldn't see my face. I got tired and my eyes started to close. I burned out the eyelids so I could see myself forever. My new face. Jeff's mother slowly started to back away, seeing that her son was going insane. What's wrong, Mommy? Aren't I beautiful? I think going insane is an understatement. Also, how did a 12-year-old even like burn their eyelids off? Guys, he's 13. He's 13, guys. Remember that. Okay. Yes, son, she said. Yes, you are. Let me go get Daddy so he can see your face. She ran into the room and shook Jeff's dad from his sleep. Honey, get the gun. She stopped as she saw Jeff in the doorway holding a knife. Okay, I don't care how crazy your son is gone. If your first instinct is to go get the gun so you can shoot him, you are messed up in the head. I feel like the normal reaction would be to call an ambulance for your son who just ripped his face apart. Also, he actually hasn't done anything threatening up until this point. Of course, he does just after, but like she's telling the dad to get the gun before Jeff has even shown any signs of violence. Like she's just ready to kill him. Mommy, you lied. That's the last thing they hear as Jeff rushes them with the knife, gutting both of them. Gutting them. Wow. His brother Lou woke up. I love that we're in the last paragraph of the story, yet the author feels it's necessary to clarify that Lou is Jeff's brother. His brother Lou woke up, startled by some noise. He didn't hear anything else, so he just shut his eyes and tried to go back to sleep. As he was on the border of slumber, he got the strangest feeling that someone was watching him. He looked up before Jeff's hand covered his mouth. He slowly raised the knife, ready to plunge it into Lou. Lou thrashed here and there, trying to escape Jeff's grip. Shh, Jeff said. Just go to sleep. This story was pretty ridiculous, but honestly, I see why Jeff the Killer became so popular after this. The image is scary enough on its own, but when you add a backstory and a catchy phrase like go to sleep, people can really start to imagine that someone like Jeff the Killer can exist. I can see if you were like 12 or 13 and heard of the story, it might seem somewhat plausible to you, which could make it scary. And the story has obviously reached millions of people, so something about it works, I suppose. This was a really fun exercise and a super fun video to record. Thank you so much for staying until the end. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Apparently that helps, and I really want to make this new YouTube thing I'm doing work, so it would mean the world. I'm going to be doing more videos like writing challenges, analyses of other creepypastas, and maybe even some deep dives into disturbing media. So stay tuned if you're interested in that kind of content. I also want you guys to know that I stream every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find my Twitch at the link in the description. I read stories from viewers in my Discord. So if you want to be featured on stream, join my Discord, also linked in the description. I'd love to read some of your work. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day or night, and I will see you in the next one.